Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
The room is a mess again. I can't even walk in. How long is this going to continue? Senora Sanz scolded Valeria. Just like her careless mother. She becomes more and more like her every year. Grandmother had raised Valeria all her life. Grandpa Jordi did what he could to provide for their meager existence. 10 to 15 years ago, he could have gotten a decent job, but now, his age is a barrier. From morning till night, he swept the streets to somehow feed the family. Valeria's parents abandoned her right after her birth. They never had high hopes, and after their daughter was born, they completely gave up. It was all about parties and drinking. No education, no goals, no ambitions. Antonina and Jordi loved their daughter and always supported her, but it wasn't what she needed in life. It's all Mateo's fault. He ruined my Marina's life, Senora Sanz always thought to herself, but she didn't interfere in their relationship. She took her granddaughter away from all the sins, kept her close. She didn't bother with any official documents. It would be indecent to air their dirty laundry, and unnecessary rumors would arise. She never thought that her granddaughter would grow up so similar to her mother, but she felt responsible for it, as well as for her own daughter. That's why she tried to smooth things out. But sometimes even Senora Sanz's patience ran out, and she lost her temper. Why are you yelling? You know I work nights. I just finished my shift. I don't have time for cleaning. I'm dog-tired, and all you do is yelling, Valeria snapped back. She worked at the local club. It was true, she spent every night there with only one day off. Senora Sanz didn't like what her granddaughter was involved in. Unpleasant suspicions were swirling in her mind, but she never allowed herself to say everything she thought to Valeria. What if she was wrong? What if it was just like any other job? Well, the girl liked working the night shift. What's wrong with that? And she and Jordi, despite their strict upbringing, also enjoyed going to discos when they were young. Granted, it was nothing like the modern youth, but times change. She didn't want to think poorly of her granddaughter, so she pushed away those thoughts as soon as they entered her mind. I'll do the laundry now, and I need to get ready for work. Don't get in my way. I'm already short on time, Valeria said in passing, taking her things to the bathroom. What are you going to do with your life? This is unacceptable. You need to get an education, find a profession. While you're 20, you can get by anywhere, but what about the future? Senora Sanz continued to express her disapproval. I've wanted to have a serious conversation with you for a long time, but you're always too busy. Always rushing somewhere. Oh, spare me the serious talk right now. I told you, I need to get ready. I'll hang the clothes on the balcony and then leave. We have to make do with what we have, but you're always dissatisfied, complaining about everything. And don't badmouth my mother. She is who she is. She turned out the way she did. It's not surprising, no matter what you do, genes play a role, Valeria retorted. How dare you say such things? Your grandpa and I raised her all our lives, taught her good things. We did everything we could to ensure she had an education and a decent job. You didn't live through those difficult times. You weren't even born when we worked 3 jobs just to survive. And when the turbulent years ended, Grandpa managed to get a good job. But it didn't last long, he got old. We had saved up some money, gave it to your mother for housing, and she wasted it all with her idiot. Apparently, it runs in the genes, no matter what you do. Well, whose genes are they? Yours and Grandpa's, whose else could they be? You see the speck in someone else's eye, but fail to notice the log in your own, Valeria continued to be insolent. Who forbade me from communicating with my mother? By the way, she hasn't been deprived of parental rights. But you, by some right, decided that she has a negative influence on me. And where's my father now? Go look for him yourself. I haven't seen my parents since the 1st grade. It's good that you haven't seen them, or things would be even worse than they are now. Senora Sanz decided to remain silent about the genes. She and Jordi never drank, but her mother and grandmother met their end with a bottle. Marina inherited from them everything that Senora Sanz couldn't overcome in her daughter, no matter how hard she tried. "Oh, Valeria, hi." A neighbor boy named David noticed the girl on the balcony. He often dropped by to see Valeria, even waiting for her near the entrance. He would bring flowers, sweets, and trinkets. He courted her. But Valeria never took him seriously. The guy from the neighborhood wasn't the prospect she dreamed of. "Hi, David. What's up? Are you wandering around outside all day again?" "I'm getting ready for work, by the way," Valeria replied with a smirk. "I was on my way home. I saw you and decided to say hi. By the way, I bought you a gift. Here, take it. It's brand new." He handed her a smartphone. "I see where you got the money from. I don't even want to say it out loud." "Oh, you'll get caught someday." "Well, thanks, I'll go downstairs now." Valeria took the phone, gathered her things, and went outside. "Oh, David, you supposedly have a car. Can you give me a ride to the club? I'm wearing heels. It's such a hassle to take public transport, walk to that bus stop, and wait for it," the girl asked. "Yeah, here's my wreck," David jokingly replied, pointing to his rusty car. "Does this piece of junk still run?" Valeria sneered sarcastically. "If you don't like the transportation, go on foot," David replied, offended. All right, why are you getting all worked up? Let's go." On the way, they laughed and joked a lot. David was a simple and cheerful guy, always ready to help and provide support. But Valeria was completely indifferent to his feelings. She dreamed of the glamour and didn't anticipate the consequences of her desire for a beautiful life. "Oh, Valeria. You made it, not late," a young dark-haired girl named Rosa with blue eyes said happily. They worked in shifts, one during the day and the other at night. During the day, there were few guests in the club. It was mostly open for appearance. Occasionally, visitors would come in, but the schedule was not as busy compared to the nighttime. "Hi." "Yeah, I'll change now, and you can take over." "I'll be ready in 15 minutes, Valeria replied and went to the dressing room. The evening was ordinary and calm. The main guests arrived at night, so the first working hours allowed for some rest. Valeria knew this, so she wasn't in a hurry. 3 hours later, the guests started coming in. Valeria immediately noticed a handsome young man who entered the club accompanied by 2 security guards. "I wonder where these young people came from. Probably on a business trip," Valeria thought to herself. The club regularly had different guests, but seeing ones like these was a first. "Good evening, what will you be ordering?" Valeria politely asked. "Please, 3 cups of coffee, 3 salads, 3 chicken chops, and cocktails of your choice," the young man replied. A strange order, Valeria noted to herself. It was unconventional for the usual clientele of the club, where people came not only to dance but also to relax. Strong drinks were mostly preferred. Rarely did anyone come to eat at this late hour. Definitely business travelers. Now Valeria was sure that the men who came to the club were not locals. The number of guests kept increasing. A group of 5 young men settled at a nearby table. They were definitely locals. After taking their order to the kitchen, Valeria approached their table. They were already quite intoxicated and ordered only drinks. "Senorita, what about some special services?" The bald young man with a tattoo on his bald head squinted. "What do you mean?" Valeria calmly replied. "Come on, senorita, don't act all innocent. You perfectly understand what I'm talking about." He rudely grabbed the girl's hand, attempting to sit her on the table. "Remove your hands immediately, or I'll have to call security, and you'll have to leave the establishment." "Oh, look at us being sensitive. All right, bring everything on the list, and make it quick." The young man and his security noticed what was happening. Valeria saw it too, but she pretended not to. "Should we go intervene?" Look at how they're behaving so shamelessly, the young man said to the bodyguards. No need, Senor Torres. Can't you see? The place has its own security. Besides, those young men are already drunk and they've fallen behind the waitress. It seems like that's not why we came here. We don't need any unnecessary trouble. Valeria collected all the orders and approached the administrator. Listen, Vadim, can I take a 5-minute break, okay? Urgent matter, you know, the girl said with a smirk. All right, just make it quick. There were no separate restrooms for the staff in the club. Everyone used the same ones as the guests. When the club was crowded, there would be a line. But it was still early today. Valeria usually did this. After 4 hours into her shift, she would tend to her personal matters and then endure until the last guest, so as not to stand in line or end up in an awkward position. The club restrooms were used not only for their intended purpose. The administrators knew about it but never took any action. There she is. 2 male voices were heard in a small corridor leading to the ladies' and men's restrooms. Valeria tried to run out, but it was already too late. Where are you going, sweetheart? Gotcha. She immediately recognized the 2 drunken young men who had been bothering her near the table. I'll scream and call security, Valeria said, trying to free her hand from his grip. Go ahead, scream. The evening is already in full swing. The music is playing so loudly that no one will hear you, the cheeky guy with a tattoo on his head smirked. What are you doing? Are you out of your mind? This is the ladies' restroom. Anyone could come in here. Well, that's just great. Our friends will join us too, and we'll have fun together. The guy grinned impudently. He pushed Valeria into one of the stalls and locked the door. Stay put. When I'm done, it'll be your turn. I'll keep watch, make sure no one enters, the shaven-headed guy yelled to his friend from inside the stall. Don't worry, I'll be gentle, the shaven-headed guy said with a sarcastic tone. And don't even think about screaming, or I'll cut you into pieces right here. He took out a knife, pressed Valeria tighter against the stall wall, and began unbuttoning her blouse. She was paralyzed. The girl understood that if she uttered a word, this deranged person could easily cut her right here in the stall. He was heavily intoxicated but acted with absolute confidence. To save time, the young man put the knife on the toilet tank and, with his freed hand, reached under her skirt. Valeria noticed this and screamed, "Help!" at the top of her lungs. A minute later, the first door to the stalls opened. Oh, it's you, you piece of shit? The hefty man in the corridor said to the remaining assistant of the assailant, delivering a powerful punch to his nose. At the same time, the second man kicked open the door to the stall and dragged the shaven-headed guy out. What's going on here? Christian asked the assailants. We didn't. We were just talking here, the shaven-headed guy stuttered in response. The security guard grabbed him by the neck and slammed his head against the tiled wall, causing blood to flow from his nose. Is that not enough for you? Want more? I can arrange that right now. He was getting a taste for it. After knocking the shaven-headed guy to the floor, he started beating him. Within a few minutes, the guy lost consciousness. All right, that's enough. We don't need any more problems. We already explained how things are. Good thing we arrived in time, Christian said to the girl. Throughout all this, Valeria sat on the floor, crying. Are you all right? Get yourself together slowly, and let's go. We need to leave this place. Get yourself presentable. Tell the administrator that you have a stomachache. We'll leave these 2 here. They'll come to their senses and leave. Come on, get ready. Yes, I will, Valeria replied, bewildered. Meanwhile, a girl entered the restroom. She froze at the sight before her. One of the guards immediately tried to take control of the situation. Can you wait outside? Just for 5 minutes. We'll gather ourselves and leave. You haven't seen us, all right? He addressed the girl. Yes. I'll come back later. She didn't know what to say. Her speech was incoherent. She left the restroom and closed the door behind her. Paula, why were you back so quickly? Her friend asked when she returned to the table. It's, occupied there, she replied, flustered. What do you mean, occupied? There are 11 stalls. Are they all occupied at once? Is the club packed? Why do you look so strange? Her friend continued to inquire. Oh, nothing. Listen, Maria, let's get out of here. Suddenly, the music in the club stopped playing. The administrator took the microphone and announced, Dear visitors, a fight has broken out in our club. There are injured and affected individuals. Please remain in your seats. The doors are closed, so you won't be able to leave the premises until the police arrive. Please have your identification documents ready. Damn it, how it can be so fast? Christian said angrily. Looks like someone overheard our commotion but wisely chose not to intervene and immediately informed the administrator. All right, we'll deal with it, the security guard said. Valeria had already dressed. The four of them exited the restroom and stood near the door. Oh, here are the culprits. Stay in place until the police arrive, said the approaching administrator. Valeria found herself in such a tangle for the first time in her life. She was very scared. What happened here? The police officer asked sternly. The police squad arrived at the club very quickly. Within 15 minutes of the call, a group of officers was on the scene. The young men beaten by the security guards had not regained consciousness. The ambulance took them away. They were alive, but their injuries turned out to be quite serious. A group of young men started a fight in the restroom. These men here attacked them, beat them up, and then tried to escape, leaving the injured victims in the restroom. One of the young men began to explain. That's not true, Valeria intervened. Those two who were taken to the hospital tried to rape me. The men who beat them up were defending me, fighting them off. The shaven-headed young man had a knife he threatened me with. Apparently, these young men heard my cries for help and immediately rushed to my aid. At that moment, the music in the club was playing loudly, so no one in the hall could hear me. One of them must have coincidentally gone to the restroom. Do you always carry weapons with you? The police officer continued the questioning. Yes. My name is Emilio. This is my partner, Felipe. We are bodyguards. We have permits to carry weapons, one of the security guards answered. Miss, take some paper and write a statement, how everything happened, who attacked you, and all the details. The three of you, prepare your documents and permits for carrying weapons, licenses, everything you have, the police officer addressed Valeria, Christian, Emilio, and Felipe. Has anything similar happened at your club before? This question was directed at the administrator. No, not at all. We have a decent establishment. Yes, you could say our club is a nightlife venue. Most guests visit our place at night, but we also operate during the day, the administrator answered anxiously. Nothing like this has ever happened here. No incidents whatsoever. People come here to relax. Many visitors are regulars. This is the first time something like this has occurred. All right. Call the manager and the director, prepare the founding and other relevant documents, the police officer instructed the administrator. The rest of you, prepare your documents. Who saw what? Take paper and write down your testimonies. Miss, if there are any physical marks left on you, it is necessary to undergo a medical examination and document them. You, Emilio and Felipe, are detained for causing moderate bodily harm. Depending on the condition of the victims, this charge may be replaced with a more severe one. The collection of testimonies continued until 7 in the morning. Valeria could barely stand on her feet. She had never felt so exhausted in her life. Usually, at this time, her workday would be over, but today Valeria had a clear sense that she hadn't slept for at least 3 days, as she was physically and emotionally drained. By the way, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Christian. When they were already outside the club, the young man reached out his hand and introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Valeria, she replied to his welcoming gesture. What's going to happen now? Well, I told them not to hit too hard, but my guys got carried away. Anyway, I'll sort it out. If anything, I'll request bail until the trial. And we don't even know the extent of their injuries yet. They might recover in the hospital, and it might turn out that it's not so serious after all. How did you end up there in the first place? I went to the restroom. The security guards accompany me everywhere. Well, not to the restroom, of course, but they stand by the door. It was the same this time. I heard you scream, and the rest you know. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I can't even imagine what would have happened to me. I was so scared. And the administrator wasn't lying. This is the first time something like this has happened to us. I've been working here for about a year, and nothing like this has ever occurred. All right. Need a ride? Yes, if it's possible, I would be thrilled. I'm so tired. I also need to visit the manager and the director later in the evening. What if they blame me for everything and fire me? I don't think they see it that way. They were shocked by what happened themselves. I could see it on their faces when they gave their statements. Listen, but in our place, the staff is always to blame for everything. You know that. It means that the fight happened because of me. So, I'm to blame. We have a small town, you can count the clubs on one hand. Now visitors will avoid our club. I'm sure it's already been reported on the news. By lunchtime, the whole town will know. All right, let's go to the car. We'll have to walk a bit. I parked in a paid parking lot. The car is expensive, and here by the club. Well, you're a local, you know everything yourself. Yes, I understand. Throughout the journey to the parking lot, she was tormented by a single question that she couldn't bring herself to ask. Only when they got into the car and needed to keep the conversation going, Valeria finally asked the question that had been haunting her curiosity. Christian, can I ask you a question? Yes, of course. Ask whatever you want. It's obvious that you're wealthy, well off. You have an expensive car, security. What are you doing in our city? And most importantly, how did you end up in our rundown club? I mean, I understand that for the standards of our city, it's not the worst club, even one of the decent ones. But you're clearly not local. Yes, you're right. I came from the capital city. To relax, but also to take care of some business. I want to acquire a chain of stores here. Maybe you've heard of it, it's called Grandma Ursula's. It's a fast food grocery chain. They have all sorts of frozen pizzas, convenience foods, and so on. I calculated that it's a very profitable project. If we invest money into it, build a few more stores, and expand to neighboring cities, the revenue would not be in the millions, but in the billions. Who hasn't heard of that chain? Of course, I've heard of it. Their products, as you know, are just meat-containing foods, but they have a high demand. You're right. Well done. You're so young and already so wealthy, and ambitious too. You're developing businesses, looking for new projects. Well, I'm not used to sitting still. And you know, let me tell you this, earning a fortune is not enough. You have to constantly multiply it. Invest a large portion of the money, otherwise you can become poor as quickly as you became rich. You think wisely, as I said. In our time, there are not many young people like you, talented, hardworking, and bold. Thank you again for your defense. Not everyone would dare to do such a thing, step in for a stranger, get involved in such a mess. Valeria was very happy to have met Christian, considering him a brave and courageous person. But that was just a first impression. She didn't even suspect that the business he enthusiastically talked about didn't belong to him and never did. Even the car he was driving wasn't technically his, except for the driver's license, but that didn't matter. The important thing was that for the first time in a long time, Valeria met someone with whom she would like to build a relationship. Due to exhaustion, she couldn't admit it to herself at the moment, but deep down, she realized it from the very first minutes of their acquaintance. I already told you there's no need to thank me. Any self-respecting man would have done the same. If you don't mind, could you give me your phone number? Christian asked. Of course, write it down. And you give me yours too. By the way, we've arrived. Are you staying for long? Valeria asked. But you know that now we're all under travel restrictions. Once it becomes clear what's happening with the criminal cases of my security guards and the victims, then we can start planning the departure. Right, exactly. I'm feeling so sleepy, sorry. Should I walk you to your apartment? No, thank you. My grandparents are at home. I'll manage on my own. Valeria stumbled back to her floor, feeling like she was walking on cotton wool. She was lucky that neither Senora Sanz nor Senor Romero had turned on the television yet. It was early in the morning. Her grandmother was still asleep, and her grandfather had already left for work. Fortunately, she didn't run into him in the courtyard, and her grandmother didn't even wake up when she entered the apartment. Valeria closed herself in her room, burst into tears, and exhausted, fell asleep. Good Lord, what is happening? Moaned Senora Sanz, listening to the news on TV. Valeria, wake up. Now you're famous throughout the whole city. People are talking about you. Hearing her grandmother's voice, Valeria knew that a difficult conversation awaited her. But it wasn't just with her grandmother that she had to explain herself. Through her drowsiness, she could hear phone calls. She was sure it was the club manager. How are you going to look people in the eye now? Senora Sanz said as soon as Valeria entered the kitchen. Did you even think about what people will say? What was I supposed to do, Grandma? Allow them to rape me, keep silent, not involve the police? What should I have done to satisfy our neighbors and acquaintances? Valeria shouted. Well, at least you shouldn't have beaten them. Your buddies beat them so severely that they ended up in the hospital. Buddies. What a choice of words. They're not my buddies at all. We only met yesterday. The guy who stood up for me was partying at that club. He went to the restroom, heard the screams, and called his security for help. He acted like a real man. In our time, that's a very worthy act. I'm not arguing with that, Valeria. But do you understand what you've done? And who is this guy with his security? Even the wealthiest people in our town don't walk around with security. Some kind of fussy dandy? Oh, I'm not in the mood for these conversations right now. I need to go to work, the manager called. We'll talk in the evening. Her worst fears were coming true. When she arrived at work, the manager was as dark as a storm cloud. Valeria had never seen him like that before. Good day, Senor Ibanez, Valeria said, entering his office. You can't call it a good day, the man replied. We need to have a serious conversation. How could you allow something like this to happen in our club? How could I allow it? What could I have done? Do you even know what you're talking about? Do you expect employees to tolerate every rude visitor? I mean, I understand rudeness to some extent. Fine, we can tolerate that. But these were genuine criminals who attacked me, ambushing me in the restroom. One of them had a knife. And what was I supposed to do? And do you at least understand what people will say about us in the city now? That in our club, employees are being raped in the restrooms, which means they can also assault female visitors. No one will come to us anymore. The club can be closed without hesitation. I understand that if we were in capital, such things happen all the time. But this is the first time for us. But the most important thing is not even that, it's the fact that rumors spread lightning fast here. How do you plan to live your life now that you've become a defendant in a high-profile criminal case? Do you realize that you'll be lucky if you're only hired to clean floors or sweep streets in our city? Valeria was filled with indignation at such injustice. Were they really so indifferent? Was her life and anyone else's life really so insignificant? I wonder how many similar cases you've covered up during the club's operation. She sarcastically asked. I'll repeat it to you, this is the first such case. Don't twist the facts. He was so angry that not only did he slam his fist on the table, but he also erupted in a shout. Valeria submitted her resignation letter and rushed out of the club. She didn't want to go home at all. The only person who could understand and support her at that moment was Christian. So she called him. Christian, what's happening there? Don Torres was furious after hearing the news. You can't be trusted with anything. Why did I send you there? To negotiate the purchase of a chain of stores. And what are you doing there? Hanging out at clubs and getting into fights? Dad, don't yell at me. It's not my fault it turned out this way. Would you have suggested pretending that nothing happened and just leaving? Christian shouted back into the phone. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that you shouldn't have been there at all. What were you doing there? Well, I wanted to relax. Don't I have the right to do that? There's nowhere else to go around here, you know that yourself. The town is small, and there aren't many places to go. He has a right. I gave you too many liberties from childhood and allowed too much. And look what has come out of it. You could have gone to a cafe to hang out. But no, you had to go to a nightclub. I knew it wasn't capital for you, but you still got into trouble. All right, Dad, don't scold me. But it seems like I found what you asked for. You remember our conversation, right? What are you talking about? Oh, you mean that girl you saved from rapists at the club? Are you sure she's exactly what we need? Yes, I'm sure, Dad. But we'll set everything up a little differently, not as we originally planned. I'll tell you my plan when you come to the city. I should come to you, but I'm under a travel ban until the case is resolved. And Emilio and Felipe are under arrest. All right, I understand. I'll leave tomorrow. Find me a decent apartment. It seems like I'll have to stay there for a long time. And yes, prepare a report on the outcome of the negotiations for the chain of stores. All right, Dad, see you soon. Christian spent the whole day on the road. The most important thing for him was to resolve the issue with the security guards. They shouldn't remain in pretrial detention. Christian decided that he should visit the victims in the hospital first and then go to the police. Perhaps he could negotiate with them, but he wasn't going to see them just for that reason. Who are you visiting, or did you bring someone here? The duty doctor asked when Christian approached the registration window. Good day. Yesterday, 2 guys with injuries were brought here. I wanted to know how they're doing and talk to them. Are you a relative or a friend? I'm their neighbor. I found out what happened to them and decided to visit, see if they need any help. They're single guys. You know, there's no one to take care of them. Just being friendly. He was uttering some nonsense, none of which was true, but the doctor believed him. When Christian entered the ward, the heroes of the recent incident were greatly surprised. Fear was evident in their eyes. They never expected the person who caused their current situation to visit them in the hospital. Oh, you're awake already? And you're looking quite good, rosy-cheeked. So, things aren't as catastrophic as it seemed, Christian said with a smirk. Why did you 2 big guys decide to mess with a girl? And you even ambushed her in the restroom. We didn't ambush her. We went there to talk because the music was so loud, it was deafening. I couldn't even hear him, said the bald guy, pointing to his friend. Well, she went to the restroom. We saw her and decided to scare her. You just didn't hear how she rudely treated us when she served our table. We didn't mean anything serious. We just wanted to startle her. All right, guys. Your lyrical explanation is irrelevant to me. That's not why I came here. Christian threw a thick envelope on the table. This is for you. It will cover your medical expenses. Now, let's talk. The bald guy took the envelope and tucked it under the pillow. In his eyes, a malicious spark gleamed. There he is, all rich, with everything so easy, he thought to himself. He had never seen such money before. He stole, well, small things. A few minor offenses under his belt, but quite short-lived and insignificant. The fact that they turned out to be individuals with a wealthy criminal background played in Christian's favor. I want to know everything you know about that girl you almost assaulted in the club, Christian continued. The city is small for you. You've probably been to this club before. So, most likely, you know who she is, where she's from, what family she comes from. Why are you digging for information? Planning to get married or something? Smirked the bald guy. Even if I do, what do you care? It's none of my business. Dude, don't mess with me. We really don't know anything about that girl. It was our first time in that club that night, but we got carried away, behaved inappropriately and recklessly. Well, you know how it goes. We saw the girl for the first time too, that's true. Yeah, she caught our attention, but we don't know anything about her. If you want answers, ask her directly. Or go to that club, talk to the manager. Since she works there, the management surely knows everything. Oh, you scoundrel. Shameless. How dare you come here? Interrupted the conversation a woman who burst into the room. I'll give you a lesson right now. She aggressively waved the bag she had brought with her and had already started hitting Christian with it. Mom, please calm down, said the bald guy. Mom, can you hear me? Stop it. I can't get up to stop you. Please, stop. What is he doing here? The woman asked sternly. He came to talk about everything that happened. He compensated us. Look. Now, please calm down, the bald guy said. The bald guy showed the woman the envelope with money. We won't forgive anything for any lousy money. Let the police handle it. You better leave right now and mark my words, I will get to your girl, you cursed pimp. I won't give you a life here. I'll tarnish your reputation better than any television. The woman continued to shout. Sorry, but you better leave before the nurses come to deal with this mess, said the bald guy. Christian left the room. Through the closed door, he could hear the woman's lamenting voice. Oh, my son, when will these bruises go away? Oh, Emilio, look, your eyes are swollen. What did they do to you? I always said, stay at home, don't go anywhere, nothing would have happened. Oh, you poor thing. He didn't get the necessary information. But the victim still took the money, and that was already a first step towards victory. There was a chance that Emilio and Felipe would be released on bail. Father will come and resolve everything, Christian thought to himself. He went to the apartment he was renting in the center of a small town. He had a meeting with Valeria in the evening. She called him and told him that after what happened, her grandparents couldn't understand her, and the manager fired her from work. This is what I need. I'll be able to have a heart-to-heart talk with her and get to know her better, Christian thought to himself. A difficult night was ahead, and tomorrow would be no less challenging. However, his father was coming, and he hadn't even started looking for an apartment for him. Just like many other things. Oh, you treacherous snake. Wretch. I told you I would reach you. The woman shouted at Senora Sanz, trying to enter the apartment. My boys will now be dragged through courts because of your debauchery with her rich brat. I won't let it go like this. Who are you? Maybe you can come in, and we'll talk normally? Senora Sanz replied, making an inviting gesture into the apartment. What is this all about? She knew perfectly well that what happened in the club had gained enormous public resonance in a short period. The whole town was gossiping about it. My name is Senora Delgado, the woman introduced herself. I'm the mother of Emilio and Felipe. My boys just went to relax at the club. Well, they drank, who doesn't? Not only were they harmed by your, how do I put it, bodyguards, but now the neighbors won't let them pass. They say my sons are rapists, criminals. Because of your daughter, or who is she to you, oh my God. The criminal past of her sons didn't interest Senora Delgado at all. It was inherent in her to always defend her sons in everything. She turned a blind eye to their petty thefts, fights, and even convictions. She faithfully fetched things for them, hired lawyers, and bribed police officers whenever the cases weren't too serious. Your girl, I suppose, will get married and leave our little town, the woman continued, but we still have to live here. We can barely make ends meet as it is. My sons have been repeatedly accused of petty thefts. Now they will be dragged into the system to the fullest extent, and I will be left alone in my old age, Senora Delgado continued. I will try to talk to Valeria and persuade her to withdraw her statement, but you must understand that your sons are criminals. Can you imagine what that poor girl went through that night? Put yourself in her shoes. Senora Sanz was sincerely outraged by Senora Delgado's behavior, but deep down, she understood her very well. Her daughter was never an angel. As for her son-in-law, he loved drinking more than anything else in the world, and in that state, he didn't know what he was doing. Even her granddaughter wasn't an angel. But they were still her sons, and no mother would wish for them to end up in prison. Senora Sanz kept her word. As soon as Valeria came home, she immediately started an unpleasant conversation with her. But Valeria didn't want to hear anything about it. Oh, what's the point of withdrawing the statement? They already had a whole list of incidents before this one. Christian even gave them money for treatment, by the way. He visited them in the hospital. And after they are discharged, let them face the consequences of their actions to the full extent of the law. You say they won't let them live? Do they let me live? Soon I won't be able to walk peacefully through the entire neighborhood. This foolish story with the fight, stabbing, and rape in the club has been played out in all the newspapers and news. Valeria indignantly expressed her justified anger. Valeria, you weren't planning to stay here anyway. Maybe you'll get married, or maybe you won't. But you always said, I'll save up money and leave, definitely leave. But people have to live here, their whole lives, with no prospects, Senora Sanz continued. Look at you, living and still thinking about people. Has anyone thought about me? Did you ever think about what will happen to those people who become victims of their they drank, who doesn't? Valeria replied. You only think about yourself. I believe we should forget about this story and never mention it again. Moreover, you've met Christian. Based on your stories, he's a great guy. He saved you, and you're already spending nights together. It hasn't even been a day. What else do you need? Christian hasn't offered me anything yet. He's just a friend to me, and that's it. Stop talking about it. With each passing day, staying in the city became increasingly unbearable. Valeria understood that even if things eventually settled down, her life wouldn't be the same after everything that had happened. She liked Christian from the first sight, but she didn't expect anything serious. Who was she, and who was he? When all these investigations were over, she would go back to Capital and forget about her. But Christian had completely different plans for Valeria, which she had no idea about until the wedding itself. Finally, this hassle is over. Now we can return to Capital, Don Torres thought to himself, sitting in the corridor. The proceedings lasted a whole 3 months, which exhausted the businessman. Well, what do you think, Dad? They released them. Christian emerged from the courtroom with joy. Our bodyguards are with us again. But bureaucrats, it's been 3 months. I thought they would consider cases in the province within a few weeks, but it's the same as in Capital. They won't let the case go to court until they check every piece of paper 100 times. There's no escape from them, Don Torres jokingly complained. All right, Dad, I'm going to see Valeria. I'll tell her we can start getting ready. We're leaving in a few days, Christian told his father. Are you sure about your decision to take her with you to Capital? The businessman asked. We briefly discussed it. There wasn't enough time for details, but you know my plan. I'm going to propose to her and marry her soon. I understand, son. I'll be waiting for you at home. Christian had long thought everything through. His plan was perfect. Despite all the troubles he had been through, he considered meeting this girl in that ill-fated club a stroke of luck. Don Torres didn't fully understand his son's intentions, but he planned to keep his word and fulfill the promise he made to Christian several years ago. The rest of the details would be revealed by the young man just before the wedding, when he was convinced that his father wouldn't deceive him. Over these months, Valeria's life had drastically changed for the worse. Her relationship with her grandparents, once tolerable, had become unbearable. Daily scandals wore her out. The only thing that saved her from arguments with her grandfather was the fact that he was at work from morning till late evening, 6 days a week. Valeria spent her only day off with Christian. During that time, she had fallen in love with him. It seemed to her that she had known him for so long. He felt so familiar and close to her. She had never felt so happy and doomed at the same time in her life. If she stayed in this town, there would be nothing good waiting for her. She hadn't been able to find a job since then. The position of a saleswoman in the market or a nearby district stall didn't suit her at all, and she was too well known in the restaurant business. Rumors spread quickly, and since the fight happened, the gossip only intensified and took on new shades. Senora Delgado had visited Valeria's apartment multiple times. Her sons had been in pretrial detention for 3 months already. If at first she shouted and berated Senora Sanz and Valeria, a month later she pleaded and cried. Her desperation evoked pity in Senora Sanz, but Valeria didn't react to it at all. When Senora Delgado called at the door and appeared on the threshold again, Valeria locked the door to her room. She couldn't understand how one could feel sorry for and support criminals and rapists. It didn't make sense to her. "Valeria, someone's here for you." "Christian is waiting." Senora Sanz tapped on the door of her granddaughter's room. Valeria immediately rushed into the hallway. She was very glad to see him. "Hi, come in. Would you like some coffee?" the girl asked. "No, I bought some pastries and juice on the way here," Christian replied. "Let's go straight to your room, if you don't mind, of course. We need to talk. I have so much news today that my head is spinning. Just don't forget to close the door. No need to let her overhear. There's no salvation anymore. This Senora Delgado keeps coming here, as if going to work, crying to my grandmother in the kitchen. I can't take it anymore. Are there any news about her sons? When will the case be handed over for trial? How would I know? No one keeps me informed, even though I'm the victim. They're searching for witnesses, hoping that someone will provide an alibi. But it's just my assumption. I don't know what they want and why this supposed investigation is taking so long either. Well, we just came from the court. And how is it? Any news? They gave my guys 1.5 years on probation. But considering that the injuries to the victims were minor, it's even a lot. But we won't file any appeals or contest it either. We're leaving in a few days. And in connection with that, I have a proposal for you. Are you willing to go to Capitol with me? Valeria had been anticipating that Christian would propose for her to leave and, moreover, she had been dreaming about it. She wanted to leave this town. Maybe not forever, but at least for a while. And this was the best opportunity to escape the routine and distract herself from everything that had happened here. Of course, I'm willing, Valeria said with a smile. Thank you again for your defense, your support, and everything, just for being here. I'm so happy that I met you on my path. Excellent. Then let's talk about our future. That's not all I wanted to tell you. When we arrive in Capitol, I propose to submit an application right away. I'm making an official proposal to you. Valeria, marry me. Christian took out a ring and handed it to the girl. Valeria was amazed by the grand gesture. It was so beautiful and probably expensive. No, she didn't love him because of money. Her feelings were sincere. But no one had ever given her such gifts or surrounded her with such care. It made her fall even more in love with him. Thank you, it's so beautiful. Her eyes were filled with love and gratitude. I need to tell my grandmother. Wait, Christian stopped her. That's still not all. I thought that if we're leaving, and I'm more than certain it's for good, maybe we can meet that unfortunate woman, Senora Delgado. Valeria, don't think that I'm defending them. Yes, they are scum and troublemakers, but you're leaving, and they still have to live here. You won't even cross paths with them on the street. What are you afraid of? Are you suggesting that I confess to false testimony and say that they didn't try to rape me and I made it all up? I'll be charged then. No, of course not. Just go and withdraw your statement. Say that you're willing to reconcile. Are you out of your mind? It's not their first crime. Reconciliation is legally impossible in cases like this. But still, go and talk to the investigator. Maybe something can be done. No, Christian, I'm sorry, but I won't do that. Especially since it's legally impossible. He had a knife. That's another aggravating circumstance. Let the neighbors and anyone else gossip about me as they please, and let Senora Delgado knock on every door after I leave. If you hadn't gone to the restroom with Emilio and Felipe, I don't even know what would have happened. Maybe this incident will teach them something. They belong in prison. Unlike her grandmother and Senora Delgado, Valeria wasn't angry at Christian for this request. She understood that he wanted to leave this town once and for all and never return to testify in court. But she had no intention of changing her decision. On the same day, they informed her grandfather and grandmother that they were planning to get married and celebrated the occasion. You will come to the wedding, won't you? Valeria asked. I'll send you money for the tickets, and you can stay with us. Right, Christian? The young man nodded approvingly. Valeria, we'll do our best, Grandpa Jordi said. But you know how my job is. Sweeping the streets is not like sitting in an office. I have to be on duty every day, he laughed. I apologize for the misunderstanding. Here's the translation using dashes for direct speech. Senor Romero, Senora Sanz, wouldn't you like to move too? I'm planning to open new projects in Capital. Weren't you an engineer in the past? Your knowledge could be useful to me, said Christian. Oh, come on, son, what are you talking about? What knowledge? That's all in the past. How many years has it been? I've been sweeping the streets for a long time. The most respected street cleaner in our neighborhood. People love me, and I couldn't ask for more. Besides, I'm already old, replied Senor Romero with a smirk. Well, you're definitely underestimating yourself. Anyway, think about it. When you come to your granddaughter's wedding, we can discuss it. Within the family circle, so to speak. Valeria packed her things, and 2 days later she, along with Christian, bodyguards Emilio and Felipe, and Don Torres, left for Capital. A new, completely different life awaited her, and she didn't even imagine that it would end before it could even begin. Wedding preparations were in full swing. They filed the application on the very next day after arriving in Capital. For almost 2 months, Valeria had been thinking about this day as the happiest in her life. She visited all the stores to choose the best dress. Christian sent invitations to friends and acquaintances, but she had no one to invite. She called her friends, but they couldn't come. Work and their relationships were no longer close enough for them to travel to a different city for a wedding. Senor Romero and Senora Sanz had already arrived in Capital. Well, Valeria, see, everything you once dreamed of has come true, said her grandmother, stepping over the threshold of the grand house. The mansion they lived in truly was magnificent. Don Torres paid attention not only to the interior and style, but even a fireplace, just like in the finest homes. Before coming here, Valeria had only seen such houses in pictures. She still couldn't fully believe the life she had been living for almost 2 months. Nor could she believe that it would always be like this. Evening was approaching. Tomorrow would be the long-awaited, solemn day that Valeria had been eagerly anticipating. Well, Valeria? It's time to sleep, said Senora Sanz, entering Christian and Valeria's room. Don't stay up too late, or you'll have dark circles under your eyes tomorrow, and the bride must be the most beautiful. The makeup artists will arrive by 7, and we must be at the registry office by 11. Yes, Grandma, of course. You go to sleep too, and I'll wait for Christian and then go to sleep, replied Valeria. I usually always wait for him. He and his father have some work-related matters today. Haven't you seen them yet? Well, if he hasn't come to you yet, it means he hasn't returned. How could he not come to see you and say hello if he's already home? I apologize for the confusion. Here's the translation using dashes for direct speech. Yes, you're right, it's just pre-wedding excitement. All right, Grandma, I'm going to rest. I think Christian will arrive soon. For a whole hour, Valeria looked out the window, contemplating the next day. How wonderful it was to marry the person she loved. She was happy and almost forgot about what happened to her a few months ago. She heard the sound of an approaching car and peeked out the window. It was Christian. Within a few minutes, he entered the house and went upstairs. Hello, my love. Tomorrow we have a significant day, perhaps the most significant in our lives. Aren't you asleep yet? The young man brought a bouquet of flowers and placed it in a vase near the bed. No, I was waiting for you. I thought we'd go to bed together as usual, Valeria replied with a smile. Yes, but not today. I need to talk to my father, discuss some matters. You understand that tomorrow is such an important day for us, and we won't have time for conversations. Besides, we need to get ready for our trip. It's our honeymoon. You go to bed, and I'll come by. Don't wait for me. All right, good night. Valeria turned off the light and tried to sleep, but after tossing and turning for over an hour, she decided to go downstairs to the kitchen. I wonder what they could be talking about for so long with her father. It must be something important, but tomorrow is our wedding day. Well, we'll both look rumpled together, she thought to herself. She tiptoed down to the kitchen. She didn't turn on the light and instead brought her smartphone with a flashlight to avoid waking anyone up. How banal, a thought flashed through her mind. It was the very smartphone that David had given her. In reality, he didn't just buy the phone out of the blue. He knew she had lost her old one, and she didn't have the money for a new one at that time. It seemed as though everything in her previous life belonged not to her, but to someone else. But for some reason, this moment resurfaced in her memories now. Valeria replayed it in her mind with a special warmth. I told you right away that she was the perfect choice. It's you, Father, always doubting, not trusting, stuck in one place. Christian's voice was clearly audible from the study. Valeria became very curious about what they were talking about. She approached the wall near the study, next to which a magnificent large flower stood. She hid behind it. She didn't even have to eavesdrop. Christian spoke so loudly that everything near the wall was clearly audible. He knew that everyone was asleep, and the bedrooms were on the second floor. The second bathrooms and the bathrooms were also on the second floor. No one went to the kitchen at night, and there was nothing for Valeria or her parents to do in his father's study, especially at that time. So he was sure there was nothing to worry about. Yes, son, I was, to put it mildly, not thrilled when I found out about your, let's say, club adventure, and in a different city no less. How would you react if you were in my place? You made headlines everywhere, and even Emilio and Felipe got arrested. They, by the way, are crucial people for me, and you know that perfectly well. Anyway, all of that is in the past. Let's talk about the business. I will fulfill my promise and hand over half of my business to your control after the wedding, but it will happen only when your Valeria becomes the founder of several companies and opens accounts to receive investments for the construction of stores and cottages. Well, supposedly for the construction. You remember my conditions and what we agreed upon, right? I'll hand over half of the business to your control, but after fulfilling two conditions. First, you get married. And second, you find someone on whose name we can open dummy companies, and for several months, the funds provided by investors for construction will accumulate in their accounts. You fulfilled both conditions, so I'll keep my word. So, have you already thought about how many investors we can involve in this? And for how long will we keep the funds in the company accounts? And how many companies will we open in total? That's where my plan comes in. Look, if we do everything at once, it will be too risky. I propose registering projects over several years. Right now, I'm getting married, we'll celebrate our honeymoon, and then I'll talk to Valeria about her involvement in our joint venture. But, of course, I won't tell her all the details. We'll open a few companies, gather money from investors, create an illusion of intense activity on the designated construction sites. We'll bring in cement, provide contracts with dummy companies for labor services. Money will start flowing in. I'll set up dual access to our bank account. Since we'll be spouses, we can do it remotely without any problems. Any bank provides joint access to an account. After that, I'll withdraw the money, and, of course, no one will find out. Over a few years, we'll amass a fortune. And it's much better than dealing with an unreliable person. Christian, what if she figures it out? Dad, come on. What would she figure out? She only has a high school education. She doesn't understand anything about economics, finance, or business. Besides, she'll agree to participate in the family business anyway. It's prestigious. And I've gotten to know her well during the time we've been together. She's vain. Yes, son, now I understand why you waited so long and didn't marry a girl from our circle. Dad, come on. Which girl from our circle would be suitable for pulling off such a subtle and cunning scheme? That's the first thing. And secondly, don't forget who controls the business of a successful daughter. A loving and caring father. Any father from our, as you put it, circle would immediately suspect the manipulations we involve his daughter in. Aren't you concerned about Valeria? When everything is revealed, she will be implicated, and for a long time. Oh, come on, Dad. We have reputable investors, half of capital is on board. Construction is a lengthy process that requires preparation. The money is not attracted a year before the start, but 2 or even 3 years in advance. We'll provide reports, so you can rest assured about that. And they won't meddle in the rest. Their business is to collect dividends. We can work like this for several years. When will it even happen? Or are you suggesting we turn to fake company suppliers and end up in prison with them in 6 months? Or buy passports on the internet, or maybe steal them? And don't forget that we either need powers of attorney or for these people to open the companies themselves, provide access to the accounts from which we'll withdraw and cash out the money. In my opinion, ending up behind bars in 6 months or even a few months is not what we're aiming for. Working with a wife who loves, trusts, and most importantly, knows nothing about business and suspects nothing is the best option imaginable. But what if she manages to prove that we set her up? The money was deposited into the accounts of companies registered under her name, but it was withdrawn without her knowledge and went into our pockets. And what evidence would there be? A husband and wife share a common budget. That's what families do. No one will ever prove that I, and not her, cashed out the money deposited into the accounts. And as for the shares, they're anonymous. How can they prove that these funds will be invested in them specifically? They can't. And you're a wealthy man. So what if you buy extra shares for retirement? Don't you have the right to do so? Dad, no one will ever prove that we have any connection to this money, and we'll be well fed for the rest of our lives. We won't have to deal with loans, frantically search for the store chains, or engage in other nonsense. These are easy, straightforward money, and our involvement with them will never be proven by anyone. My wife runs a business, yes. But not all husbands know in detail what their wives are doing, right? And as for her ending up a criminal, it's not my concern. I'm not to blame for that. We're not in the Middle Ages, where a husband is legally responsible for his wife's actions. I told you that the club meeting, even under such circumstances, was a stroke of luck. And you kept protesting, asking why I got involved. Don't worry about relatives and such. I checked. Her mother and father are heavy alcoholics, her grandmother is a housewife, and her grandfather is a janitor. You know that yourself. Well, I've told you my plan. I have a wedding tomorrow. It's time to get some sleep. Upon hearing these words, Valeria cautiously emerged from behind the flowers leaves that had concealed her all this time, quickly went upstairs, entered the room, and dived under the blanket. She couldn't believe what she had heard. Could it be true that Christian had orchestrated all this for such a vile and dirty gain? Perhaps even the encounter in the club wasn't a coincidence? But no, that simply couldn't be, she thought to herself. In the club, Christian truly happened to be there by chance, and he even displayed the nobility he had desperately shown on that ill-fated evening. But when he got to know Valeria better, he realized that she could be the person who could bring his father's plans to life. In reality, he didn't own anything. Back when Christian turned 18, his father promised to transfer half of his fast food chain's business to him. It was contingent on him getting married and finding a person he could trust enough to register the supposedly construction-related companies under their name to attract and subsequently cash out investors' funds. Already then Christian understood what was what. Like the fact that finding someone to work with in this way for several years while remaining detached would be very difficult, but he did it. By the age of 30, or even earlier, he would be rich and free, and he wouldn't need anything more from life. Having finished the conversation with his father, Christian went to the bedroom. By that time, Valeria pretended that she was fast asleep. In reality, she heard him enter, and one single question spun in her head: what to do next? After all, the wedding was tomorrow. In the morning, all the guests had already gathered near the registry office. They only had to wait for the couple, but they still hadn't appeared. Don Torres, maybe you should call Christian? We'll be late for the registration, anxiously said Senora Sanz. And it's obvious the guests are worried. Our registration is in half an hour. Where are they? Senora Sanz, Valeria said that she and Christian need to talk. They'll arrive on time, don't worry. If it's necessary, then it's necessary. They'll make it perfectly fine on their own, they're not little children. You saw that everything was in order this morning. The makeup artist arrived, did the makeup, there were no problems with the dress, and the restaurant is also booked. They'll arrive, they won't disappear, calmly answered the businessman. Senora Sanz's heart was not in its place. Since morning, she understood that something was off with Valeria. Despite trying to put on a joyful appearance and hide that something had happened, she couldn't. You can't hide anything from your own grandmother. She feels everything. Valeria, are you ready? What did you want to talk to me about? Christian was already composed. Oh my God, how handsome he is, she thought to herself, looking at the young man in a sharp, classic dark blue suit with a white bow tie. She was so shaken and bewildered after hearing what she did yesterday that she didn't even know where to start. Christian, please sit down and listen to me, calmly said Valeria. Just take my words seriously. Christian didn't understand what was going on, why his fiancée's mood, who just yesterday had no doubts about him, had suddenly changed. He sat opposite her in a chair and looked at her in the eyes attentively. Christian, I heard your conversation with your father yesterday, continued Valeria. It happened accidentally. I couldn't sleep, went down to the kitchen to get some water, and heard your voice from the office. You were confident that everyone was asleep and nothing could be heard on the second floor, so you spoke loudly. And what did you hear? I heard everything from the very beginning to the end. Tell me, why are you treating me like this? Why me? Christian was shocked and didn't know what to say. On one hand, he already partially loved Valeria, but on the other hand, business interests were always paramount to him. Yes, he got married mostly for benefits, not love. He really wanted to become not just the rightful owner of half of his father's existing business, but also multiply his capital several times without much effort or responsibility. Without gray and criminal schemes, it was impossible. Business itself was impossible without them. If he had married a girl from his social circle, he would have, at best, received only half of her father's business because they wouldn't have allowed him the opportunity to execute the rest. Yes, he took advantage of the situation. It was a banal coincidence. Valeria, you're not involved in this, really. It just happened that way. If you've already heard everything, there's no point in hiding anything. When I first met you, honestly, I didn't think about all of this. I was completely sincere when I saved you in the club. I would have acted the same way if any other girl had been in your place. Later on, I realized it was an opportunity, and I couldn't let it slip, Christian quietly said. You know, maybe, as you rightly said yesterday, I don't understand anything about business, numbers, companies, calculations. And yes, you probably could have asked me, after the wedding, to register all those investor companies under your name, hiding behind the well-being of the family and future fortune. You could have deceived me with accounts that I absolutely don't understand. Most likely, you could have manipulated me for many years if it weren't for someone who opened my eyes to our so-called business. But no one would have done that because I have no one except my grandmother and grandfather, who also don't understand anything about business or laws. And then I would have ended up in prison. And you probably never thought of me again. But at least I understand something in life, and for me, white is white, and black is black. It was, it is, and always will be that way. What do you mean by all this? I apologize for the previous oversight. Here's the revised translation using dashes for direct speech. I won't even bother to find out whether you did all this for your father's sake or if you're just that kind of person by nature. But I can only say one thing, I won't marry you, Christian. I had doubts since the morning, honestly. I even did my makeup and put on a dress. I thought I could live with a person who uses me. Because I still love you very much, I managed to fall in love. To reject the so-called business expansion and signing documents after the wedding because I know everything and simply live with you. But I can't. Thank you for everything you've done for me, but no. Valeria stood up and went upstairs to change. Christian was completely bewildered. He didn't even immediately hear his phone ringing. Yes, Dad, he answered in confusion on the approximately 15th call. The phone had been ringing for about 10 minutes. Christian, where are you? Your registration is about to start. What are you even thinking? Don Torres asked sternly. Dad, we're not coming. The wedding is canceled. Christian immediately hung up the phone. And where are you going now? Are you going back to your little town where neighbors point fingers at you and criminals walk the streets nearby? Christian asked Valeria, who had descended from the second floor. How will you live? Work? It's none of your business. Why do you care so much? Find yourself another foolish village bride who knows nothing about business. Maybe you'll be much luckier with her. Perhaps she won't accidentally hear what she shouldn't and won't find out what a scoundrel you are. True, it will be very painful later, but what can you do? Apparently that's life. When Valeria left the house and headed towards the bus, she heard that her phone was also ringing incessantly. Valeria, where are you? What happened between you and Christian? Senora Sanz's voice sounded worried on the other end. Don Torres said you're not coming, and the wedding is canceled. What happened there? Just leave that place. Don't forget to pick up your things at Christian and Don Torres's hospitable house. I'll be waiting for you at the train station. We're leaving Capital today, Valeria said and hung up the phone. She felt so empty that it seemed there was nothing left in her soul. Sometimes she wondered if it would have been better if she hadn't overheard that random conversation. Then she could have lived happily in ignorance until a strong blow shattered her entire life, forever changing it. But no. It's better to know the bitter truth now than shed bitter tears later, Valeria thought to herself. It wasn't about Christian's plans. She didn't care about his manipulations. It was about who he was. How could courage and nobility coexist in a person, along with the desire to help others, compassion, and such cunning and unchanging qualities? This thought didn't make sense to the girl. On that same day, Valeria, Senora Sanz, and Senor Romero left capital. In the evening, Christian told his father what had happened between him and Valeria and why she practically ran away from the wedding ceremony. Well, son, coincidences are not accidental. So, you're poor again. Well, congratulations, Don Torres sarcastically replied after listening to Christian's story and closed himself in his office. 2 years passed. Well, you see, it's good that we moved to another city. Senora Sanz couldn't be happier. The apartment sold quickly, and David immediately followed you. Now you have a good job, and you finally started studying. Even though you spend the whole day on the internet, taking some courses, at least you're not spending nights in restaurants and clubs. Immediately after the failed wedding with Christian, Senora Sanz and Senor Romero started selling the apartment. The decision to move was made swiftly, but everyone understood it would be better for Valeria. After everything that happened, she wouldn't have a life there, or it would be so unbearable that they would have to move anyway. Well, it doesn't matter to me. I can find a job as a janitor anywhere, Senor Romero joked when he heard that Senora Sanz decided to sell the apartment. David couldn't find peace. He couldn't imagine his life without Valeria. Knowing what she had been through, he didn't expect any kind of relationship, but he supported her from the day she returned, inviting her for walks, giving her flowers, taking her to the movies, buying ice cream and fruits. Deep down, he sincerely hoped that one day she would respond to his feelings, but he didn't rush her or hint at anything. Upon learning about the move, David decided that it wouldn't be a bad idea to change his place of residence too. Nothing held him in the city. His parents were no longer alive. They left too soon. Alcohol ruined many, and they were no exception. He usually engaged in petty theft, sold illicit substances, and did odd jobs at an auto repair shop. He was lucky, so he never got caught. But he despised such a life. He managed to sell the apartment quickly. We used to live in the same building, and now we're in neighboring ones, David said to Valeria after the move. Yeah, it's great to have at least one friend here. The city feels foreign, and there's no one around. At least I have someone to go for walks with, she replied. She was genuinely glad that David had moved after her. Valeria knew he was in love with her, but she couldn't reciprocate his feelings. Sometimes she still thought about Christian, but she was afraid to admit it even to herself. Immediately after the move, she got a job as a beauty salon administrator. She liked this field. She enjoyed watching the nail technicians do manicures and eyelash extensions. 6 months later, she enrolled in courses. Well, isn't it great? Being a manicurist is a highly demanded profession these days. Senora Sanz supported Valeria when she found out what she was doing. It was the first time she genuinely supported her granddaughter without criticism or reproach. Some of the classes were conducted online, so it was easy for Valeria to combine her studies with work. The phone rang. Oh, your mobile is ringing, Valeria shouted. I hear it, I'll answer, Senora Sanz said. Hello, I'm listening. Hello. This is Senora Mora, do you remember us? We bought your apartment, a female voice on the other end of the line said. Did something happen? No, they just came to your place. It seems you haven't told everyone about the move or given them your new phone number. And a letter arrived too. Who came? 2 young men, Alex and Carlos. They asked to convey their sincere apologies to your granddaughter Valeria. I don't know what your relationship is with them. Are they by any chance the same young men who were defendants in a criminal case 2 years ago? Yes. Probably, maybe it's them. Senora Sanz, like Valeria, tried to forget that dreadful story. That's strange. What could they want from us? How fortunate that we moved, the woman thought to herself. She decided not to tell Valeria about their visit, thinking it was unnecessary. So, what should I do with the letter? Senora Mora continued. It's a regular letter addressed to Valeria. Consult with her. If she doesn't mind, I can scan it and send it to her email. It would be a waste to send it by regular mail. It's so last century. Okay, let me ask her. And who is the letter from? It has a capital address. From Christian Torres Prieto. Senora Sanz was genuinely surprised. Would Valeria want to read what that scoundrel had written? But she didn't have the right to decide for her. Just a moment, I'll ask Valeria. All right, I'll wait. Valeria, please come here, Senora Sanz called her granddaughter. A letter arrived from Christian. The new owner of our apartment, Senora Mora, suggests scanning it and sending it to your email instead of forwarding it. What should I tell her? Do you want to read this letter? Senora Sanz asked Valeria. At that moment, Valeria felt her soul sinking and her heart raced with anxiety. She remembered him, despite everything. Yes, let her forward it. Tell her we'll send the email address via text message, Valeria replied. 5 minutes later, her phone blinked. The email had arrived. When Valeria opened her mailbox, she noticed that her hands were sweating. Hello, Valeria, it's Christian writing to you. If you still remember me, please read this letter to the end. I tried to find you on social media, but couldn't. Your old phone number is unavailable. I guess you changed it. So, here I am, writing you this letter in an old-fashioned way. If you ever find it in your heart to forgive me, a heavy burden will be lifted from my soul. It was only recently that I fully understood what happened on the day of our supposed wedding. You made the absolutely right decision to run away from it. I always strive to be like my father, trying to live up to his expectations in everything. He raised me to pursue wealth and an easy life, and I did everything I could to justify his hopes. Even when I was a teenager, we started planning our scheme. I didn't want to exert any extra effort or work. I wanted to have everything all at once. I wanted to appear as a millionaire, though I never truly was. Those few years that were part of our plan were constantly tormenting my thoughts. But you were right, within my cunning and resourcefulness, nobility and courage coexist. Responsibility and determination also reside in me, and it is these qualities that allow me to change for the better. Now I am a completely different person from who I was 2 years ago. I don't know if you'll believe me, but when we first met, I didn't intend to use you. My actions were genuine. It was only later that I decided that you were the perfect fit for realizing our long-planned scheme with my father. When my father was imprisoned for his schemes, I was able to reassess my life and start living differently. It turned out that he hadn't always acted honestly towards his partners and investors, and over the years, small-scale manipulations had accumulated. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and his accounts and assets were seized. I hope this will be a good lesson for him, and he will change too when he's released. However, you're probably not interested in that. I just wanted to say that during this time, I realized that I truly love you. If you ever decide to respond to me, here's my phone number. You can call or message me anytime. I would be very happy to hear from you. Of course, I remember. Of course, I'm interested. How could I forget you? How could I not be interested in what's happening with you? Valeria thought to herself. She found the strength within herself to forgive Christian. 6 months later, they got married. It was a modest and quiet wedding, but that day remained the happiest in their lives. Valeria moved to Capital, but they now lived in a regular apartment on the outskirts, which Christian bought with the money he managed to save while working for his father. They built their lives differently now. Valeria completed her courses, got a job as a nail technician at a beauty salon, and started gaining experience. Christian decided to use his remarkable abilities for the greater good. He found work as a financial specialist and provided consultation services to private clients at home through the internet. He regularly visited his father. He didn't abandon him in a difficult situation, and Don Torres was grateful to him for that. Senora Sanz and Senor Romero finally began to live peacefully and happily. They sincerely rejoiced for their granddaughter and hoped to spoil their great-grandchildren soon. When David learned that Valeria had gone to Christian, he was disappointed but understood that he couldn't compete with him and never had been. If she loved him and would only be happy with him, then he had to let her go. Only then could he become free for a new feeling. In Valeria's hometown, people gradually started to forget the story that happened in the club several years ago. Alex and Carlos served their 2-year sentences in prison, and they too had changed significantly. They no longer stole or led an immoral lifestyle, they supported their mother. They had some kind of odd jobs, such as small repairs, but it was enough for their basic needs. They helped their mother, and Senora Delgado couldn't be happier. Life went on, and nothing could bring it back to the past. Over time, Valeria had matured so much that she realized that if all those things hadn't happened, she would never have met Christian and wouldn't have experienced such boundless happiness.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.